while the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965, so was the Immigration Act of 1965, which is many regard as the most sweeping immigration reform in the history of this country, and really fundamentally changed the face and the heart of this nation. There are a number of very tough anti-immigration measures that are being proposed throughout the country right now, most famously, I guess, in Arizona. And those measures are being challenged in the Supreme Court. The Obama administration opposes those tough anti-immigration measures. I'm wondering, why should, in your view, the Supreme Court strike them down?
Well, first, the regulation of immigration is something that is inherently a federal responsibility under our system of government. And if we were to allow the states to do this, we could have a patchwork of laws that would not handle this issue, I think, in an appropriate way. And I think we can never forget that we are a nation of immigrants. Whether you came over in the Mayflower or your descendants, or a slave ship, or part of the great migration of the early part of the 20th century, all of us, save Native Americans, trace our lineage to someplace else. We are all, at some point, immigrants. And that in some ways is both, that is the genius and the strength of this nation. It is through immigration that we revitalize our nation. We bring new people in with different ideas, different thoughts. It has always made this nation stronger. It is an advantage that we have against other nations who are our competitors in the 21st century. And so we can't turn our back on this immigrant past that has made this nation great, and we certainly cannot allow the states to do that which the federal government has always had the responsibility. That is an argument, obviously, that the Supreme Court will ultimately have to decide, but I think the law is on our side, and I think history has put its arm around the position that we will take.
You have a very big job at a very eventful time. What is your biggest priority when you wake up every day? What is your top priority?
I think that probably the whole question of national security. I come back to the Justice Department, having been there last during the 90s when I was Deputy Attorney General in the Clinton administration, to a Justice Department that's fundamentally different. We have new national security responsibilities that did not exist in that Justice Department from before, which was a pre-9/11 Justice Department. I sit down every day at 8:30 with the FBI director, and we are briefed on the threat stream for the past 24 hours. And it is a very sobering thing. Whatever my mood is when I get up in the morning, by the time that 8:30 meeting is over, I'm usually not in a good mood. When I hear about all the threats and plots and people who are trying to do things to people here in the United States or against American interests around the world. So that is the thing that keeps me awake. It is the thing that consumes the vast majority of my time. But one of the things I wanted to do when I became Attorney General was not to, although we have to spend huge amounts of time on national security, was not to forget what I've come to call the traditional mission of the department. The Justice Department has a unique responsibility in other areas when it comes to civil rights, the environment, antitrust. And I wanted to make sure that in those areas, while we're still fulfilling our national security obligations, that we would also continue to make sure that we had a vigorous and aggressive Justice Department in those other areas as well. And I'm proud of the men and women in those other areas who I think are doing a great job.
You had obviously seen this job up close as deputy, but what most surprised you about this role when you actually undertook it?
Well, this is going to sound funny, but maybe funny. People actually listen to the Attorney General.
You got about 800 of them right there.
When you're Deputy Attorney General, I can give speeches all over the place and get picked up, maybe not picked up. When you're the Attorney General of the United States, whatever you say tends to get scrutinized, tends to get reported, and if you're not careful, tends to get you in trouble. So that's something that really it's taken a little time to get used to, but it's also made me understand that I have the ability to raise issues and to bring things to the consciousness of the nation. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the whole question of voting rights here at the LBJ Library, the best venue in the world to talk about this particular issue and to hopefully generate some conversation about this, to make people aware of the problems that I have detailed, and to put, I think, this country on a course that Lyndon Johnson set, so that we don't think of ways in which we exclude people from having the right to vote, but expand, always expand, in an appropriate way, expand the way in which people will have the right to cast their ballots.
I've got some questions here from our audience members tonight. We know that this is not the time for levity. However, do you think President Gingrich will reappoint you? That's a real question.
All righty. There are, as I frequently say in Congress in response to the friendly questioning that I'm often subjected to there, I will disagree with the premise of that question. But were it to occur, I think you could take to the bank that I would not be President Gingrich's Attorney General.
A quick answer to that question. What is the fate of the Defense of Marriage Act in 2012?
Well, this is ultimately something I think that the Supreme Court will decide. We made the determination when confronted with a unique situation that we found in the Second Circuit that had not passed on the constitutionality of DOMA, that we had to make the determination as to what standard should be applied. Given the history of discrimination that gays and lesbians have had to endure in our nation, we thought a heightened scrutiny test was appropriate and did not feel that DOMA passed that test. And on that basis, we indicated that we would not defend the constitutionality of the act, something that Justice Departments rarely do, though prior Justice Departments, Republican as well as Democratic, have done. We have since indicated to courts where we had previously taken a position that we would defend the act, that we no longer will defend it. This is something that, as I said, the Supreme Court will ultimately decide. But I think that given where we are in 2011, and given the history that we've had, that DOMA simply does not pass constitutional muster, that we are in a fundamentally different place, and but again, it will be for the Supreme Court to decide.
Right. I'm reading this verbatim. Often in discussions of voter suppression, the impact on voters with disabilities is overlooked. What is DOJ doing to ensure that individuals with disabilities have equal access to the ballot?
Well, that is really an integral part of our voting rights effort. We have a voting rights section that focuses on all of the things that we are supposed to follow. It is not simply about race, not simply about gender, ethnicity. The questioner is right. We also have to make sure that there are not physical limitations, physical things that prevent all Americans, whatever their physical capacities, from exercising their right to vote. And that is something that we work on. We work with states to try to make sure that voting places are accessible, and to the extent that they are not, we bring suits. We challenge and we make sure that that is the case. It is, as I said, an integral part of the work that we do.